Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 5K GeoGuessr Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Wetzler. In today's episode, I had the pleasure of talking to Feneb. He's a young Australia player. He is currently starting to prepare for the World Cup qualifiers in May. And we talked about things like advanced duel strategy. And by that, I mean how to look for information in different countries, depending on the country, the hierarchy, what to look for in each country. We talked about duels he's had versus pros. We talked about how he's preparing for the World Cup qualifiers, and we talked about who we thought was going to win the Americas qualifiers, which just happened. That part is a little outdated. I haven't had a chance to post this till today. We talked about his future and hobby outside of GeoGuessr 2. It was a real pleasure talking to him. He is so enthusiastic and so eager to learn so many things. He knows his Kabupaten, and he's currently learning U.S. area codes. So without further ado, here is Feneb. Have you always lived in... Is it okay if I share the name of the city where you live? Is that...
Sure, I've shared it a bunch of times in Lions Den and whatnot.
Okay,
I
I
think
just
just
see
about
it.
everybody knows that I'm in Canberra.
Okay, have you always lived there? Did you grow up there?
No, I grew up in Sydney,
Okay,
and then moved down to Canberra when I was about 4 years old.
okay. Do you do a lot of like training? Um,
Yeah, I do practice a fair bit. A lot of my training is often like outside of the game,
mhm,
as because as a moving player, a lot of it is memorization.
mhm.
So I spend a lot of time doing quizzes.
Okay.
So for things like subdivisions, for infrastructure, like metas and stuff, there's a lot of quizzes and a lot of memorization. I actually have, you can see it, it's just over on the floor over there. I have a cheat sheet that I wrote up of all the US phone codes.
Whoa, you're learning U.S. area codes.
Yeah.
Do you know what the area code, any of the Washington area codes are?
I haven't, so I've been working my way through the alphabet and I am up to about Illinois so
Oh,
far.
okay.
So not quite up to Washington yet, but
Okay.
yeah, slowly working through.
Yeah, I mean the East Coast is tough because there are a ton of area codes over there.
Yes. California has like what, 25 or something?
Oh, I did not know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's there's so many.
But then you get states like Montana, Wyoming,
Yeah,
the
they're
Dakotas. Yeah,
all one area code.
exactly. I was checking that out the other day because I was like, the Western United States can be pretty, I mean, all States can be pretty tough. But if I just know
Yes.
like at least Montana area codes, then that could come in handy.
Yes.
Like, I'm not
Oh
going to
yeah,
learn them
definitely.
all. I know I'm not going to learn them all.
No, I it's a little bit crazy and yeah, it's definitely not, required knowledge. There's you can get so far just based on landscape and a bajillion other matters.
Yeah. How do you consider yourself a decent US player?
Not that decent. I mean, hopefully once I've learned all the area codes, that'll come in handy a lot. But yeah, definitely not the best US player.
What about Australia?
I think I'm pretty decent at Australia. It comes with having lived here for, 18 years or so. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a pretty decent Australia player
Yeah, it's always fun to guess in your own country. I want to
in your
talk to
own
you
country.
about moving duels for sure a little later down the road. I'm kind of just saying this so that I'll remember because I really want to hear what your strategies are for moving duels. It
Yeah,
fascinates
yeah.
me, but first, I just want to kind of maybe do a little introduction. I mean, we talked about
Sure, sure.
where you're from, and where yeah, where you grew up, and but how did you get into GeoGuessr?
So I was introduced to GeoGuessr back in year nine in high school by a high school geography teacher who I had, Mr. Pogson. I'm
Yeah,
almost certain he will never watch this, but if for some reason he is, massive shout outs to Mr. Pogson. He was a great teacher and the
awesome.
absolute goat for introducing me to GeoGuessr.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so that was all the way back. Yeah, that would have been what, 2018.
Hmm.
So yeah, what, 6 years ago now, pretty
Mm-hmm.
much. Um, and I played casually. This was before Duels existed. This was when, world moving was pretty much the only thing that anybody played.
Yeah.
And GeoWizard getting sub 30 minutes for a 25K was like the pinnacle of speedruns.
Okay.
Which it was at the time. It was amazing what people were doing without the wealth of knowledge that we've built up over time. Um, but yeah, that was when I started playing, and then over the next sort of 5 or so years, I just played pretty infrequently and just casually over the years. I didn't even realize until, you know, about a year ago that duels had even been added. I never
Oh,
played
wow.
any duels. Yeah, I wasn't really a part of the community at all. But about a year ago, when sort of after a bit after Rainbolt and other people doing GeoGuessr really blew up, I sort of um, got hooked on GeoGuessr through the Rainbolt YouTube Shorts pipeline and
Nice.
started watching not only Rainbolt but a bunch of other GeoGuessr content creators and saw the duels and the different maps and leagues that people were playing, and I thought, yeah, this seems cool. I should have a go. And I'm a very competitive person by nature.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I started playing duels, and the ranking going up and trying to increase my elo and stuff, it was full steam from there. And so from
Yeah.
the over the past year, I've just been playing and learning and having loads of fun. So yeah,
Nice.
that's sort of how I've got to where I am today.
Nice. And
Yeah.
you're rated about 1400, right?
Yeah, 1400, peak rating about 1530 or so.
Whoa.
Yeah, that was a few months ago, but yeah, um, did hit 1500, so that was very nice.
And on your Discord, you call yourself a mediocre. I don't know what the game is. Celeste. How do you pronounce that?
Oh, Celeste is a game that I have speedrun in the past. It's a fantastic platformer. If people aren't familiar with the game Celeste, definitely go check it out.
Okay.
It's hard, but it's an absolute blast. If you're looking for a game to start doing speedruns, absolutely recommend it. Great
What kind of
game.
game is it?
It's a 2D platformer. It's essentially the story of a girl who's trying to climb a mountain.
Okay.
Um, yeah, a very, very fun game.
Cool. But you also say, so you say mediocre Celeste and GeoGuessr player. Is that
That bio admittedly has not been updated for a
okay?
while. I don't think I would call myself a mediocre GeoGuessr player now, but when I
Hmm.
wrote that like 9 months ago and I was still in like bronze division or something, I definitely was a mediocre GeoGuessr player.
Yeah. Did it take you long to move up once you started going hard on it?
Yeah, I think I improved pretty quickly. I've had a few people say that it's pretty impressive how quickly I've managed to learn and go up through the rankings. So yeah, I think I've definitely done a good job of, practicing and sort of min-maxing what'll get me the most rating gain for the least amount of effort and time. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. Minimum effort, maximum rating gain. Like, how do you think about what to learn and training and all that?
Um, Absolutely. I think one of the most useful things that I did a few months ago, I just grinded country streaks, and I would go and play through country streaks. And if I missed a country, then I would look at if there was one, I'd look at the Plonket guide for that
Okay.
country and see if there are any particular metas for that country that I'd missed, because when you're playing ranked modes, half of the battle often, especially in No Move and NMPZ now that those exist, is just identifying the country.
Yes.
So um, that's definitely, I think, a really good way to improve is just playing country streaks. If you're a new player, playing country streaks is a great way to improve. The
I
other
agree
thing,
fully.
um, it's a lot of people don't do it, but I really do recommend learning some uh, basic subdivisions.
Okay.
They come in super handy. So some ones that I think are particularly useful are even if you're just a beginner, are knowing where all of your Mexican states are.
Mm-hmm.
You see them written all the time on signs and on addresses, and it just helps. It saves time scanning for them. It just helps so much to know where the different states are. And knowing another great one is the Philippines provinces. Those are written
Yeah.
on addresses everywhere. Really, really handy to learn.
I'm guilty of not
So
knowing those fully, and it's embarrassing.
no, it's no, it's perfectly justified. And there's stuff that people know that are supposedly, elementary level non-moving stuff that I would just never have heard of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, we've all got holes in our knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, it
Well,
comes down to, I think for me, it's finding the balance between like, okay, what should I learn, but what do I also
yeah,
want to learn?
yeah.
And
There's
like,
definitely
yeah,
there's definitely some subdivisions that I've learned that don't necessarily come in that handy, but I like memorizing stuff, and it's fun to do that. So yeah, why
have
not?
you learned Kabupaten?
I do know Kabupaten.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I want to quiz you. Hold on a sec. I have a
Oh
couple.
no.
I have a couple written down. Okay, Bengkulu Utara, that's a little easy. Bengkulu is not
Yep,
an
in the
island.
province of
Okay,
Bengkulu.
Rokan Hilir.
Rokan Hilir. So one of the cool things about Kabupaten is that a number of them are named after rivers. So the
Ooh.
Rokan is a river, and
Uh-huh.
Hilir means, I believe, downstream.
Oh my gosh, you speak
So
Indonesian.
I do not speak Indonesian, but I do know a little bit of like the cardinal directions. Utara,
Yeah.
Tenggara, Selatan, etc.
Yeah.
It's handy to know just some of those little terms. So I think Rokan Hilir is in Jambi. It's one of the ones in the river that exits to the north. It goes up like north to the north coast of Indonesia.
That's correct. Not Jambi, but
Oh, okay. Was it North Sumatra,
yeah, it
perhaps?
was looking like
Or
North Sumatra. It's
okay.
hard to tell on this map if it's Riau or North Sumatra, but it looks like North Sumatra.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, let's do two more real quick.
Sure.
Minahasa.
Minahasa is at the very tip of Sulawesi, like North Sulawesi. So
Nice.
it's right near oh, what's the I forget the city that's the capital of North Sulawesi.
Manado.
But it's yeah, Manado. It's right near Manado.
Nice. Wow, I'm impressed. Okay, one more. Sragen.
Uh I think Sragen is right. I think it's in central Java, sort of just north of Yogyakarta. There's a chance that it's written in on the map, but I might be wrong. I'm 90% sure that Sragen's in Java somewhere. The Java ones I don't know so well
Yeah,
because a
no,
lot of
that
them are
was good.
named
It's just
after.
north of Surakarta.
Yeah, just north of Surakarta. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of the Java ones, I don't know the exact location too well because
Hmm.
they're just named after cities that are easily scannable on the map.
Yeah.
So if people are looking for a tip in terms of learning Kabupaten, learn Java last
Yeah, I was gonna
because
ask you about
they're
that.
the ones that are they're the ones that are easiest to scan for.
Totally. And I mean, if we're talking about reward, effort versus reward, is there any point to learning Java? Like,
Um,
I guess,
some
well, learn
yeah,
it last.
just for familiarity. Yeah, absolutely. If you're going to learn Java, learn it last. But there are a number of players who have learned all the Kabupaten except for the ones in Java, and that serves them just fine. I mean, Java's the most distinct island anyway,
Hmm.
and it's also much smaller than some of the other islands. So realistically, yeah, if you don't feel like learning the Java Kabupaten, that's yeah, a completely valid way to go about learning them. I definitely put off learning Java for a while.
Yeah, I was thinking of starting with Kalimantan, maybe if I ever try to learn them.
Yeah. Kalimantan's a good place to start. Sulawesi as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, those are two that are definitely useful to start with.
Hmm. Nice. So speaking of information, you are mostly a moving player.
Yes.
Is that just kind of came about naturally? That's just the mode you most like to play?
Yeah, I have to give a large amount of credit to both my interest in moving and also a lot of my GeoGuessr knowledge to Jake Lyons.
Okay.
Probably the GeoGuessr content creator who I've watched the most of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
when
great. I was just watching a video of
when
his like right before we got on the call.
yeah, so when I was first starting to play competitive duels, I played a duel against Jake back when he was right around. I think this was around the time of the anniversary season, and he was pretty close to rank number one in the world at the time. Yeah, absolutely cracked at moving duels. And this was when champions and masters could still play against each other.
Yeah.
And I queued into Jake and got pretty thrashed. Admittedly, I did almost beat him because of one very lucky round on a trekker in a shopping mall in New Zealand.
Amazing.
And I sent New Zealand and he sent Australia. This is not to flame Jake. It was I got very lucky because I didn't really have much indication that it was New Zealand. But yeah, afterwards I looked up Jake's YouTube channel because I saw the Jake Lyons YouTube on his profile, and saw his videos and saw the video that I was in, and I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. Like watching recordings of people's moving duels is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started watching heaps of Jake's moving duels videos and got hooked on moving and then through Cactus League and a bunch of other sort of moving challenges. That I think that's where I developed a real appetite for moving and 5K'ing stuff.
Nice. So it sounds like it's at least somewhat natural, like.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Uh-huh. And let's see, I just realized I totally kind of cut off what you were talking about with getting into GeoGuessr. You started playing about 5 years ago. And then what was the real impetus? What really made you you said you were playing kind of off and on casually, and then you got hooked like a year ago. Was that kind of around the Jake Lyons time?
Yeah. There was around the same time. I think discovering duels was mostly what got me hooked. I still play heaps of duels to this day. Probably, if I wanted to get really good, I would spend less time playing duels and more time studying. But I really do enjoy duels, especially moving duels. So that's sort of what got me hooked.
Nice.
That, along with a steady supply of amazing content from a whole lot of GeoGuessr YouTube creators.
Yeah, there is a lot of good content out there. I love watching Jake Lyons videos. He's been having a bit of a tough time lately. He's been getting a little tilted, but always rooting for him.
I very much sympathize with Jake as another moving, and Jake's far better than me in terms of, moving and no moving, but particularly as somebody who is mainly a moving player, the introduction of no move and NMPZ duels has been rough. As the first few weeks after it got introduced, I tanked like 200 ELO. Mm-hmm. It was but slowly we'll get better.
Mm-hmm. Are you playing the whole hiking season? Are you doing every duel?
Yeah, I'm playing all of the hiking season. Not uploading all of my games to YouTube, but a fair chunk of them. So yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, and how has that been going with the NMPZ and the no moving?
First week was rough. I went 2 for 5 in the no move and 1 out of 5 in NMPZ.
Mm-hmm.
But since then, it's all been 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5. So bit better. Yeah.
And what about moving? What do you kind of hope for out of 15?
Moving generally, I hope for about 12 out of 15. Yeah, that's a solid week for me.
Nice. For me, I'm more of the 50% mark. So
yeah. Oh,
7 or 8.
Yeah.
I just get too
Trying to
freaked out.
trying to stay top 100 this season, but we'll see.
That's awesome. Let's talk more about moving. I would love to know like how you approach rounds. Like when you're like I'll give you my example of how I do it. Like my kind of process is, all right, you got lock screen, you're trying to figure out maybe the country from the lock screen. I always try to
Yep.
do kind of like a 360 pan. And then if I don't know the country, I don't know. I don't like to move really until I at least have a decent idea because when I move, I
Yeah, yeah.
panic. So what's your strategy and what would you
I definitely do
recommend?
the 360 pan as well. Mostly for me, that's because I'm trying to pick a direction to move in.
Okay, cool.
Because in moving so much more than no move in NMPZ, time is your big commodity. It's
Yep,
can you get to
I
info
love that.
first? Can you find usable information and can you use it first? So it's all about being quick. Um, it's speed runs in sort of a live competitive form, really.
Hmm.
So generally, when I do a pan around, it's because I'm trying to pick a direction that I
Okay,
want to
and
go in.
what is the criteria? Like, what are you thinking about picking a direction? Because I've thought about that before too. It's like
Yeah,
it's so important to pick the best direction, but it's
yes.
kind of sometimes it can be tough.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of discussion in terms of moving and a lot of people say, oh, moving is just getting to signs and reading stuff. But it's more than that. There's a lot of decision making that goes into what route do you take and
Yeah.
how do you move. There's a few things that I generally follow. One sort of rule of thumb is I almost always will go downhill rather than uphill.
Yeah, I like that.
Um, Generally because when you're going uphill, like when you go downhill, you're traveling often into valleys where there's going to be more settlements, more information. There's almost always stuff at the bottom of the valley, whereas up at the hill, it might just be a lookout or something.
Yeah.
Um, Another thing is if I see signs, I'm going to go in the direction of signs. So
Yep.
I guess the main thing that when I'm picking a direction to go, it's always I'm trying to prioritize where I think will lead me to the most info. And there's some nuances of that. Like sometimes in Argentina, say, that's a really interesting one
Hmm.
because in in say urban Argentina in a small town somewhere out rurally, sometimes it's a better play to actually head out of the city onto a highway where
Yeah.
you're going to find signs that say distances rather than trying to look for an address within the city because addresses aren't that common in Argentina.
Okay.
So
That's
there's
great.
some real nuances that come into decision making of where to move to.
Hmm. Well, that's awesome about Argentina. Yeah, that's just so cool how the area you are is going to influence that decision making process for what you're
Yeah,
looking for.
I think a really important part of moving is knowing what kinds of information are available in what country. In the
Hmm.
Philippines, you're going to be looking for an address with a
Okay. Yeah.
province. In Japan, unless you can read Japanese,
Hmm.
you could look for pole plates, you
Yeah.
could look for road numbers, or you could look for area codes.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, in Peru, for instance, sometimes you'll find province or the regions of Peru written on sort of political candidate advertisements on the
Yeah.
sides of houses.
Oh, I
So
didn't know that. I always feel like those things are too small to read. But
sometimes
oh, you mean
they
the ones that are
yeah,
painted on
sometimes
this?
yeah, the ones that are painted
Okay.
on.
Yeah.
Sometimes, not always. Sometimes they're completely, or sometimes they're tiny little regions that you'd never have heard of. But sometimes they will have the region, so it'll say like Piura or Tumbes
Hmm.
or yeah, like those sorts of different regions.
Okay. That's really
So
cool.
yeah,
What about
knowing what sort of info is available is a big part of decision making and moving.
hmm. I'd like to keep going just a little more with this subject because it's fascinating to
Sure.
me. Well, just to name a few more examples, what are you looking for in Brazil, for example? What is your process?
Brazil, I always say, is the most stressful country in moving because it's panic, panic, panic until you find an area code. Because area codes in Brazil are more overpowered than in like literally any other country. Like in my opinion, like only the US and Japan come close, and the US, you've got to be a bit crazy to learn all the area codes. But yeah, Brazil is panic, panic, panic till you find an area code.
Yeah. What about like, are you just going for area codes, or how's your like pole knowledge? Are you looking for the little highway signs alongside the road, or are you pretty much just locked in, like find an area code?
In Yeah, so in Brazil, like sometimes you'll be in a rural round and it does help to know sort of poles and stuff. But yeah, Brazil mostly or the kilometer markers. If you're on a rural road, the kilometer markers that say, the state abbreviation and then the highway number. Those are the sort of two big pieces of information that I'd be looking for.
How are you with like foliage and architecture and that kind of stuff?
It varies a lot country to country. Some countries I know a fair bit about. Mexico is probably one of my best countries, no move.
Cool.
So I know a fair bit about Mexican vegetation, foliage, architecture, that sort of stuff. Australia, the alien, I know a fair bit about what the landscape and the vegetation looks like in different parts of the country. Yeah. So yeah, it varies a lot country for country, as I'm sure it does for a lot of people.
Yeah.
What would you say are your best countries?
Best countries? That's a good question. I would say Chile.
Yep.
But the thing is, everyone's good at Chile now.
Yeah.
But I've been to Chile probably 10 times at this point. And
wow.
I've been all the way from Arica, and then I've hitchhiked from Arica to Valparaiso. I've been all the way down to Punta Arenas.
Wow.
I have friends on the island of Chiloé. I lived in Puerto Montt for a little bit. So I've feel very familiar with Chile and know quite a few place names.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so that's like our IRL. I mean, that's what really accelerated my getting into GeoGuessr, was just lots of in real life travel experience. I mean, this is just a small one, but I know I have some markers for Route 5 of like how far up, like if I see a kilometer marker on Route 5, I kind of know how far north that puts you up. Like I know that.
Oh, cool.
700 or 800 will put you near like Algarrobal, which is by Vallenar kind of. I know that 1300 will put you by Antofagasta. I know that 1800 will put you by Iquique, more or less. So like, so Chile's decent. Mexico is decent. I was really grinding it a few months ago, but now I've kind of lost it a little bit.
Yeah. Same here.
Yeah, US can be decent just because, I've been to a lot of places in the US and that helps. Yes. Actually, Canada, I like guessing a lot in Canada. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time in BC. And
cool.
And I studied in Quebec. So I like Canada, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like my IRL experience only takes me so far. So
yeah, but IRL experience is still one of the most valuable things in terms of knowledge, because you just get so much of a more holistic sense of what an area looks like. Yeah. That, just sitting down and playing, games can't necessarily give you.
Yeah. Continuing a little bit more with the theme of like what your criteria is for looking for stuff. We talked about Brazil. What about Europe? How do you approach Europe?
Europe, I mean, the first thing is identifying the country. You get a lot of domain names in Europe. So those, I mean, in moving games, those are always, I mean, often that's a last resort. Bollards, infrastructure, all of that sort of stuff. Europe, it's a lot of it comes down to being familiar with cities. So once you know what country you're in, just knowing lots and lots of different city names.
Yeah.
And of course, being familiar with the highway systems of different countries.
Hmm.
So, knowing the Spanish kilometer markers, knowing what the abbreviations mean. So
Hmm.
those, yeah, Europe's a pretty mixed kettle of fish. There's some
Yeah.
countries where, I might as well be playing no move. As soon as I see the country, I'm just gonna, like Bulgaria.
Yeah.
Generally it's just plonk middle of Bulgaria for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it is for me for a lot of European countries. But
Yes.
um, what about last one? What about Russia? How are you doing with Russia? What's your approach for Russia? Do you know
Uh,
all the antennas and all the mate
Russia is an
coverage and
ongoing battle. I know all the easy ones. The Altai Republic with like white car, long antenna, that one. The Tunkinsky National Park that's sort
hmm
of southwest of like Irkutsk and Ulan-Ude. The white car that goes along the Siberian highway and stuff. And, Petropavlovsk and
yeah.
Sakhalin and Murmansk and stuff. I know the easy parts. I haven't yet sat down and studied all of the hard stuff, the seasonal coverage and the B type, A type, very B type, what you call it, antennas and
Yeah.
stuff. That's in the future.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I'm pretty useless in Russia, but thanks to Finbar, I'm learning a little bit and it's
Yeah,
fun.
a lot of people complain about Russia, but over the year or so that I've been playing, I've learned more and more that the antennas are more just all the antennas and coverage and stuff, more just help with consistency. Because Russia is surprisingly region guessable just based on landscape alone.
Hmm.
And there are a bunch of really cracked players who are, really good at Russia. And, even if you took away the car and all the antenna and stuff, would still be really good at guessing just based on vegetation
Yeah.
and the terrain and stuff. Even if you took all the car matter away, they'd still be, top players at Russia.
Who do you think is well, do you think Finbar is the best at Russia, probably?
I know
Or
Finbar's said that he's a bit washed at Russia because he hasn't played as much recently, but I think he's still definitely one of the best Russia players. I'm not too familiar with Russia. I'm not in the Russia Discord. I
okay.
know Akinator is great at Russia. He's got a few sort of oblast streak records and stuff. There are probably other great players at Russia who I'm completely missing, so my apologies to
Yeah.
them
No,
for
it's
not knowing. But yeah,
yeah.
I'm
Cool.
sure I'll learn about more of them when I actually sit down and start to grind.
Okay, well, talking about when to send, I feel like your eyes kind of lit up maybe a little bit when
Oh,
I
definitely.
when I mentioned that and what came to mind.
I love thinking about GeoGuessr strategy. So this is
Hmm.
this is definitely something that I've thought about a lot. Um, I mean, it varies as well on the game modes. I've seen, I'm always amazed by the patience. I've seen in like Finbar Baba Binks's YouTube videos where he's playing no move duels. On a round where no move, normally I might just send because I know the country and perhaps the right region. He'll actually
Yeah.
spend a lot of time sitting down and trying to scan for something that he thinks fits. Um,
Hmm.
and that's something I wish that sometimes I had that patience to sit down and really scan for something that fits. And it's something that I've been trying to do more in my no move duels. When it comes to moving, I think it's some ways a little bit easier because it's just can you find info? And I
Hmm.
think then it becomes a matter of do you want to 5K?
Yeah.
Um, because in some ways, like if it's on a long highway, then 5King actually can make a fair bit of a difference, especially in high multis.
Totally.
But if it's some tiny highway in Denmark and all you need to know is like the highway number and you're going to be within a 5 kilometer range guaranteed, then that's when I think 5King is more just for style points and
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to get you anything further.
I mean, it's totally a flex, but
Yes.
I've lost my mind watching some people like not to throw them under the bus because I'm watching their YouTube channels because I love them as players, but like Phineas, Zigzag, Steno are three people that come to mind who they sometimes, in my opinion, will go a little that extra mile to get the 5K. And I'm just like screaming at the screen, like just guess because
just guess.
Yeah, I know that their opponent, who's not as good as them usually, their opponent is using those 10, 15 seconds to like figure out they might not have even known the country.
Yes, exactly.
And those 10 to 15 seconds that they spend 5King is like critical. They're giving them this, like, they might have gone the other continent, but yeah.
And then there's the flip side where you send too early and that 15 seconds can be enough for your opponent to find info. I've definitely been guilty of there was a duel that I had a few days ago where I sent in India because I recognized the Bengali. Yeah. And so I sent in West Bengal, which I thought was a reasonable guess. It wasn't too hilly, so I was assuming it wasn't going to be, like Assam or something. But I guess, and then I'm sort of panning around and I see that behind me there was another sign that says Assam on it.
Oh no. Yeah.
And my face just fell. It's 3x Maltese. We're both on reasonably low health. What can you do? My opponent, obviously, 15 seconds is more than enough time to read the sign that says Assam in big writing and click Assam. And I've just sent too early because I've seen Bengali and sent quickly.
Yeah. Well, that's a tough thing, especially with the multipliers. The multipliers ramp up that pressure. And I feel like I personally play slightly different when there's higher multipliers.
Oh, definitely.
And I hate that.
Yes. Oh, it's so easy to once you get to high multis, and it depends on whether you're winning or losing. If you're winning, you might just send quickly. I had a game against Debre the other day where I was winning. I had like 2,000 health. He had like 50.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it was like 4x multis. And there was a round in Italy. And right at the spawn, there was a whole lot of signs. And I recognized because I know provinces of Italy, and a lot of provinces are named after the biggest city in them. So I recognized the signs immediately. And I was like, okay, well, if I 5K, then there's a decent chance that because it's like 4x multis, that'll be the 50 damage that's required.
Yeah.
So I spent time 5K, but I got lost in the source with all of the signs.
Oh no.
And didn't end up, doing enough damage. He was actually closer than me. And then the next round was some random rural Argentina, or like a random rural Argentina, and I lost or something.
Yeah.
And he explained to me when we were chatting about it afterwards that he was convinced that it was Sardinia for the first 20 seconds or so.
Oh, no.
Because he thought that the signs on the towns sounded Sardinian. So if I had sent at the time, I probably would have won.
Yeah.
And that's something where hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah.
And I should have realized, oh, okay, I know where these cities are. If I plonk, he's also not going to 5K. There's a decent chance that I'm just closer. But yeah, the mindset of how you play on low versus high multis changes so drastically.
Yeah. And the thing is that your thought process there is totally reasonable.
Yeah. I figure I'm pretty good at 5King stuff. Surely if I find it quickly, that's a guaranteed win, right?
Yeah.
But rather than trying to gamble and hope that my guess is closer. And obviously, I don't know that he thinks that it's Sardinia.
Of course. And I mean, that's what I was thinking about actually when I was doing the laundry. I was like, they always talk about with poker, you're not playing the hand of cards, you're playing the person across the table from you.
Yes.
And with GeoGuessr duels, it's pretty much the exact same thing. Like,
yes,
if you know what your opponent's strengths are or weaknesses or what can frazzle them or whatever, that can go
Absolutely.
knowing what they know and what they don't know, I mean, is huge.
One of the most interesting things I found a while back, I wasn't super familiar um, with a number of players, but I played a couple of games against Partee just in Moving Duels,
Yeah.
and I was very confused by his strategy at first because anybody who's played Partee knows that he loves to insta send and
Yep.
he's
I've played him
amazing
before.
at
He's destroyed me. He's made me
yeah.
want to cry with the insta-sends.
And the first few times that I played him, he was insta sending against me, and I was like, "What on earth? What am I supposed to do?" I'm just almost just trying to keep up with him and get my guesses in time.
Yeah.
And that's when it clicked to me. This is a brilliant strategy if you're good at like NMPZ and stuff, because you're setting the pace, you're
Hmm.
setting the tone of the game, and you're the one forcing the issue.
Hmm.
And that can really play with your opponent's head, especially as I was, very much used to playing slower paced moving duels where it was click around until you find info. This was before fast moving even existed, so moving duels
Hmm.
were often very slow paced.
Hmm. Well, how much do you take that into account when you're personally playing duels? Like, how much do you take your opponent into account? Do you just kind of try to play your own game and not even think about the opponent? Or do you think like, oh, they're rated 1100, maybe I should insta send, or oh, they're rated like, yeah, how much do you take
Yeah,
them into account?
definitely. Definitely, I'll tend to insta send more against lower rated opponents. I mean, it depends on whether it's a country that, like, if it's, say, the Philippines, right, where I know all the provinces, or Indonesia, where I know all the Kabupaten, I'm going to go look for that because
Hmm.
I'm going to make the assumption that it's more likely that an 1100 doesn't know Kabupaten.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any
Some of
1100
them
players
do
who know Kabupaten,
nowadays.
maybe.
You get some crazy cracked, like people who are like 1100 but know all the Kabupaten and stuff, and it's
Yeah.
like, wow. The standard, the one thing that I've noticed over the last 6 months, the standard of play overall, like 1100 nowadays is like completely different to 1100 just 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Everybody's gotten so good so quickly in the last 6 months.
Yeah. No, it's insane. Like, I don't know what I want, who I want to play against when I'm playing a duel. I don't know if I want them to be 1300 or 1500
Yes,
or 1100 because 1100 players can be so cracked. And if you lose, you're going to lose so many points.
yes,
There, like, I don't see an 1100. And when I see an 1100, I'm not like, oh, yes, like I'm going to win. I'm like,
yeah,
dang
yeah.
it. Like, I
No, it's
might lose and I might lose a lot of points here.
yes. Oh, exactly. I've seen a number of people discuss whether it's time for there to be another split in duels for say like 1350 up,
Hmm.
which I think is an interesting proposition. The issue that I see, and I think why the devs are hesitant to implement something like that, is that the queue times for 1350 plus would be horrendous.
Yeah. The
So
GOAT
what I've
League, maybe
seen,
they call it the GOAT League or the GOAT
yes,
division.
what I've seen also suggested is to do ELO-based matchmaking. So a little bit like how you go on to, like, say something like chess.com, and you're not in a division, you can queue against anybody, but it's going to prioritize people within a certain range of ELO to you.
Yeah.
So as 1500, say, you'd be playing people who are queuing who are also, 14 to 1600.
Okay.
Um, so that's sort of something that I've seen proposed, and I think that would definitely help. Having ELO based matchmaking, I think, would be a big improvement.
Yeah. No, that's a really cool idea, and we can like I don't know. I want to talk about multipliers too, um,
Yeah.
as far as comp goes. But my last question, as far as like dual strategies, is what is your threshold of how close you want to be before you send? And I know that is country dependent. So we can pick
Yes.
any country. Like you said with the Philippines, you want to know the province. Basically,
Yes.
before you can send. Can you think of any other countries where, I don't know, maybe if you're Europe or the US, like what is kind of your threshold? I'll give some of mine. Like for me, Hungary, I don't have a threshold. If I know I'm in Hungary, I'm
Yeah,
clicking
yeah.
middle. But
Yes.
if I know I'm in the US, my threshold is a lot higher. Like I want to know what state I'm in at least.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's an interesting one, and it really does depend on what you know. So in
Hmm.
Germany, I know Landkreise and I know like phone codes and stuff.
Okay.
So I'll play until I see one of those
Yeah.
generally. I'll wait, and if my opponent sends first, sure, then I'll
Yeah. You'll
try and
make do.
make a Germany region guess and fail.
Hmm.
Um, um, yeah, it really does depend. Japan, I would almost never send unless I know at the very least the electrical region, based on pole
Yeah.
plates or pole tops.
Uh-huh.
Until I know that, I will like never send.
Uh-huh. What about Norway? Just to pick a random one.
Norway is a bit of a nightmare. I've been trying to practice a little bit of Norway region guessing lately, and it's hard. Norway, yeah, generally info can be hard to come by sometimes. I know that
Yeah.
there's a 150-page document out there somewhere on the
Really?
bins of Norway,
Oh my
like the
gosh.
garbage bins that some crazy guy in the lion's den put together a while ago.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna read through that.
Yeah, neither am I. I'd like to
Um,
see it just to see that it exists, but
it's truly something to behold. I've scrolled through it, and there's a ridiculous amount of research put into it.
yeah.
Yeah, Norway, I'm happy to just send on a rough region guess, but I'm not happy with how my region guessing is, so it's this catch-22, and I'm trying to break that by getting better at region
Hmm.
guessing.
Yeah. So is generally, it sounds like what I'm hearing is like generally the criteria is like obviously country and then like
Yes.
next biggest subdivision. Is that kind of
Yeah, yeah, and it depends so much on what I know. Like for
hmm.
countries where I know a lot of sub or know, I'll be able to find info and use that. That's
Yeah.
and countries where there's highway numbers readily available. I'll go look for that. If I'm going to be able to use it, then I'm going to go look for it.
Yeah. Is Cambodia middle click for you?
Um, Sometimes I do know the province names in Khmer, which appear on signs
Oh my gosh.
buildings and stuff and advertisements. Sometimes they
Yeah.
can be fake and be referencing a business that has its is based in another province, but a reasonable amount of time they're not. So those are really handy because you can quickly find out what province you're in.
Hmm. And I mean, that's something I want to get away from is just clicking middle because it kind of takes the fun out of it
Yes.
and it just drives up the multipliers.
Yeah, Maltese building rounds are no fun.
Yeah, which I feel like at the level that I'm at, like a lot of stuff is just multi building like so like Guatemala,
Yeah.
Cambodia, Belgium, Netherlands, Denmark,
Yeah.
Israel, Jordan.
They're
These
all these small countries that are just Maltese building rounds.
uh-huh. And then that brings us to multipliers. Like what are we going to do? What needs to happen with multipliers? What are we going to do about multipliers? Because the system is not it's not
Yes.
sustainable. Something needs to change.
Yes, I've seen so many people complain about multipliers. I've complained about multipliers. Yes, something needs to happen. Um, I've seen a few different suggestions proposed. I think the first thing is that a multipliers cap is just a good idea.
Yeah, I
I've
agree.
seen a number of people say that multipliers just shouldn't exist in NMPZ at all,
Yeah,
which I think is
I could
fair
get on
enough.
board with that. Yeah.
In a game like NMPZ, you're going to have enough country misses that multipliers also almost aren't necessary
Hmm.
because multipliers exist in things like moving. Because when people are getting close all the time,
Hmm.
but you start with 6,000 health, if multipliers didn't exist, games would go on forever.
Yeah.
But in NMPZ, where people are missing the country, fairly frequently or
Or
aren't
continent.
pinpointing yeah, or continent or yeah, when you're not pinpointing with the same degree of accuracy that you are in moving, multipliers just aren't nearly as necessary. So I think removing multipliers in NMPZ would honestly be a pretty good change that I would love to
Yeah.
see.
I could get on. I could definitely get on board with that. It would at least make my NMPZ games longer.
Yeah. Another thing that I saw, I forget who it was. Somebody suggested this, I believe, when discussing the format of the World Cup. Um, think it might. I'm going to try and credit somebody just so that I'm not claiming this is my own idea. I
Okay.
think Bojan, who is a mod in the Lions Den Discord, I think he might have suggested this. The idea was that so when you're playing a duel, you would have your own personal set of multipliers, and that
Okay.
would only increase when in a round you were closer than another person. So the idea is that it would prevent situations where you're consistently getting closer than somebody for, say, the first 10 rounds,
Yep.
and then in the 11th round, they make a really lucky guess, and all of your hard work is gone,
Oh
right?
man. Yeah.
So instead, over the course of those first 10 rounds, your multipliers would be building up because you're consistently getting much closer than they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then come the 11th round, even though they are much closer, that doesn't kill you because their multipliers aren't that high yet.
Oh yeah,
So
that's genius.
it rewards consistency rather than getting lucky and just hoping to get to high multis.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few issues that I could see with a system like that. I think it would significantly reduce the amount of comeback victories.
Mm.
But on the one hand, I guess that isn't the worst thing. It means that more often better players will win. And I think it would be overall a fairer system. So
Mm-hmm.
when I saw that suggestion, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. No, that's I had never even thought about that or heard about it. It's a really cool.
Yeah, no credit taken here. It was a brilliant suggestion, but definitely not mine.
Yeah. No, but that's cool. I also would like to see some system implemented where smaller countries become more important because, you know,
Yes.
right now I have no desire or motivation to learn the Netherlands, but if it was
Yeah.
suddenly as important as Russia, then I would definitely try to learn the Netherlands.
Yeah. And some sort of balancing, because I think overall bigger countries should always be more important
Mm-hmm.
because there's just more to learn about them, I
Mm-hmm.
think, in general.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, definitely finding a way to balance it out so that smaller countries are actually interesting and there's a reason to learn them, I think would be really valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, let's move on to the World Cup.
Yes.
We've got the North American qualifiers coming up in 3 days,
Yep.
which is pretty
I,
crazy. Off camera, we were looking at the different groups. Let's what do we got here? What do we got? We got that thing you sent me. Okay, we got the groups. I can't find it anymore, but it's just
I
on
think we
the
have, off the
GeoGuessr
top of my
Twitter.
head, one group is Blimey, Orlando, Totem, and Foul.
Yep.
And then the other group is Jake, Gingy, or Gingy, I don't know.
Gingy, probably.
Gingy. Jake, Gingy, Moo, and I feel really
That's
bad
it.
because
Yeah.
I'm forgetting
Jake. CG. Chicago Geographer.
CG. Yes, Jake,
Yeah.
CG, Gingy, and Moo.
Yeah.
Yep. So
So,
those are the two.
what do we think about the groups? What do we think about favorites slash what's gonna happen?
It's difficult not to see Foul as the favorite in Group A.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think, yeah. I mean, I've played him a number of times in Moving Duels. He is insanely good.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have like an 0-4 record against him.
Yeah, he's
Um,
amazing.
yes. Uh, so yeah, um, I think he's definitely the favorite. I know he's mentioned that he doesn't want to see himself as the automatic favorite and act like it's going to be an easy win.
No,
But
I think that's a healthy attitude.
yes, yes. But from a spectator's perspective, I'm definitely expecting him to do very well.
Hmm.
Um, it's difficult to I'm not super familiar with some of particularly Gingy. I'm not as familiar with. I know he's very good.
Hmm.
I've heard a lot of people say that he's very good, and then those people who have said he's very good are very good. So I'm going to
Yeah.
trust them. uh, yeah, it does. A lot of people have said, as always, it does depend on the rounds.
Oh,
People have
totally.
very different skill sets. There are some, people who are really, really good at moving, and then some people who are much, much better at no moving in NMPZ.
Yeah.
Um,
That group B is tough. I mean
yeah,
they're both tough, but like Jake, CG, and if Gingy is really good, and Moo is definitely good. I saw him
oh
on.
yeah, oh insane. His knowledge of copyright matters is ridiculous.
Oh, okay, I did not know that.
He's one of the people who's like crazy booked up on copyright matters and car and like seasonal coverage and stuff.
Hmm.
It's like how you read through the Russia document and you have this antenna, this color car, this like fall coverage or something. He
Yeah.
knows that, but for like most of Europe and the rest of the world.
Wow. Yeah, what
He's
was it? It
he's
was
so good.
Finbar today. Finbar in his video from today had some copyright meta that I was like, I have to remember that. Oh, it was Ukraine. It was like May coverage, Ukraine. I guess it wasn't copyright. It was May coverage.
Yeah, yeah.
Like yeah, Finbar's meta knowledge is just off the
Oh yeah,
charts.
absolutely insane.
Okay, so and you were saying you think that the top five
Yes,
advance?
so as far as I know, the top five advance. So the question is, out of these eight players,
Yeah,
who's advancing?
yeah, and that's I mean, okay, I you got to pick fungus.
Yeah,
Who would you
I would
say
say
are two or three that you have to pick? I mean, other than fungus, who do you have to pick?
my guess is probably Jinji and Mu.
Okay.
Just based on, I mean, I've seen Mu play in La Ligue. I've seen him play, against Jake in the Road to the Regional series. Um, yeah, overall, an incredibly cracked player. His knowledge is insane.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think those three are probably my picks to go through,
Hmm.
guaranteed.
It's interesting you don't put CG in there. I mean, I haven't. I watched him in the World
Yeah,
Cup.
perhaps I'm being too harsh on him. There's so many good players here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just hmm.
And what about
It'll all
Jake?
depend on the day. Yeah, Jake's. I really hope Jake doesn't beat himself up too much.
Hmm.
Um, if Jake happens to watch this, best of luck.
Yeah.
And please don't beat yourself up too much if you make bad guesses.
Hmm.
Um, if there's moving rounds with info, like Jake's instantly one of the favorites. His knowledge of place names is close to second to none in terms of GeoGuessr players.
Hmm.
Like, you know, I I thought I was doing pretty well in Italy um when I knew all the provinces and stuff. And then I was watching a La Ligue stream the other day where he like immediately recognized the name of a national park, even though one of his teammates had mispronounced it slightly at first. And
Wow.
it's like, wow, the fact that he recognizes that off the top of his head, like just to know that is
Yeah.
insane.
And even when
His
it's
his knowledge of
mispronounced.
place names and subdivisions is just ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's going to be so exciting to watch, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to watch the live stream, but I'm definitely going to watch the when they upload it to YouTube. And
Yeah,
I watched Orlando, a little bit of Totem, and a little bit of Fly Me play against Jake.
yes.
but unfortunately, I don't know a ton about those players. I don't want to leave them out. I
Yeah.
mean,
No,
yeah.
they're amazing players in their own right. I've played a number of Moving Duels. Not recently, but a while back, I played a number of Moving Duels against Flyme
Hmm.
and got destroyed. This was like 4 or 5 months ago. So hopefully it would go a little bit better now, fingers crossed. But yeah,
Yeah.
very, very good player. Everybody there is really, really good.
No, it'll be exciting to watch. And what about you? You're going to be hopefully trying out for the qualifiers in your region in May.
Yes, so the online qualifiers for the Asia Pacific are in May. I definitely hope to take part, but my hopes of getting through to represent Australia at Asia Pacific are, I would love to, but we'll see whether that happens. Probably not. There are a few players in Australia who are definitely better than me. Um, Kirania is an amazing no move and NMPZ player. He's been rated above 1700.
Yeah.
The same goes for Lero. Repler is cracked as well, as is
Norbert,
Eddie,
Zigzag. Yeah.
Norbert. Yeah, Zigzag, I think, will hopefully be auto
Oh,
qualified
yeah.
through to
Maybe.
the finals because he was at the World Cup.
True.
I'm hoping, fingers crossed, I don't have
Yeah.
to
No, that makes
also
sense. I
compete
think
with
you will
him
be.
for a qualifier spot.
Hmm.
But yeah, and shout outs as well to somebody who doesn't get enough of a shout out because he's a moving player and sometimes moving players don't get enough of a shout out in general. But
Hmm.
Gertie Gugu, who I have played a number of times, is an incredible player when it comes to 5K stuff and doing things like Cactus League and
Cool.
Lions Den League. He is always at the top of the Lions Den League standings. Yeah, he's amazing at 5K stuff and those
Cool.
hand-picked maps. He's great as well. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of stiff competition, and that's just in Australia.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you've got Eamon in New Zealand, you've got Sheena in Japan, and Tribota from Singapore. Like a whole lot of crazy crack players in
Hmm.
in the region. People have said that Australia Pacific is one of the weaker regions, but even
Yeah.
if it is, there's still so much talent.
No, I was going to say that mentioning all these players, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of strong talent there.
Oh yeah.
So what are you going to be doing to prepare?
Um, Project number one is to get better at Russia.
Hmm.
That's one of my biggest weaknesses right now. So, uh, my goal is to try and learn as much of Russia as I can between now and the qualifiers. And overall, just to improve at no move. I feel
Okay.
like moving, I think I could hold my own against anybody in Australia or like 90% of the players in Asia Pacific
Hmm.
because it's my specialty. Yeah, the issue for me is no move,
Okay.
and
So you're
then
gonna be working on
NMPZ.
that. Do you still
Yeah,
grind country streaks quite a bit, or is that not something you do anymore?
yeah. I mean, I was just before we were recording. I was going through and trying to do some arbitrary rural world
Yeah.
streaks. So yeah, I still do country streaks a fair bit. Maybe I'll try and set some records at some point. But yeah, lots of practice of specific countries is probably going to be my main game plan between now and the qualifiers. I might even, you know, uh, yeah, take the leap of faith and start digging into all of the copyright matters and coverage and that
Yeah.
sort of stuff.
Cool. And are you going to continue to upload YouTube videos, or what does the future look like for
Yeah,
that?
the game plan for me, I don't know whether I'll upload the next season of competitive duels. I sort of did this as a trial. I've sort of started uni again for the year, so things
Uh-huh.
are naturally going to get a bit busier. But
Yep.
yeah, I'm definitely going to keep trying to upload more YouTube content in the future. Definitely, future seasons of Lions Den League. and hopefully the Geography Challengers League and Reddit League. I'll definitely play in a lot of leagues and upload those.
Great. And so you said university, you're there. What are you studying again?
I'm studying science and medical science.
Okay. So you want to be a
Yeah,
doctor or
hopefully a researcher doing medical physics.
cool. Medical physics. What does that entail?
A lot of it deals with radiation treatment for things like cancer. So yeah, a lot of it is about either imaging, doing scans like CT scans, CAT scans, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the other half is like radiation therapy, zapping tumors, all of that sort of stuff.
Cool. Is that something you've always been interested in, sort of, or how did that come about?
Yeah, I've loved physics for a long time. Um, and I've always wanted to do something on the more applied side of physics and
Hmm.
medical physics. When I read about it and did some work experience, it was just something that I found really cool because it's physics, but it's physics where you're actually, helping patients and you're
Yeah.
applying it in a medical context, which is something that's really, really cool to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, what year are you in uni?
This is my fourth year of university.
Cool. Well, I wish you the best with that. That's really awesome, and I of course
Yeah.
wish you the best with the qualifiers. And what last thing? What do you do to unwind when you're not in uni or when you're taking a break? What are your other hobbies outside of GeoGuessr?
Um, I read a lot.
Cool.
I love reading, particularly nonfiction. I mean, there are lots of players who I've met in the GeoGuessr community who have come to this game largely because of a love of learning. They love
Yeah.
learning about stuff, love learning about countries, and doing it in a game format is just ideal.
Yep.
The other thing behind me actually is my
I was
piano.
wondering if that was a piano. I was like, I think that's a
That
piano,
is my
but
piano.
yeah, that's so cool.
So the other thing in that's been a big part of my life for a long time now is piano. So I've been playing for about 13 odd years now.
Hmm.
So yeah, currently in the middle of preparing for my licentiate exam, which is the highest exam that I can do under the Australian Music Examinations Board. So
Cool.
that's where a lot of my time is going at the moment outside of GeoGuessr.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are piano and reading and GeoGuessr are sort of my big passions. Chess as well. I
Oh
love
yeah,
chess.
chess.
You'll play a little bit casually.
Uh-huh. Do you mostly play? Do you mostly watch games, game analysis, or?
I used to watch a ton back in the day, but
Hmm.
yeah, um, nowadays it's mostly more just playing casually. But
Yeah.
yeah, a few years ago I got really, really into chess, and
Hmm.
thankfully I've still retained a little bit of the skill.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite chess player?
Um, uh, I really do. Magnus is always fun to watch. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, but Fabiano Caruana with his podcast that he has, a C Squared podcast,
Yeah.
is always a fun listen. He's got a great sense of humor.
Yeah. He's really cool.
Um,
I've listened to that podcast a little bit,
yeah, definitely a great podcast.
talking about all the cheating controversies lately and things
Yes,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah. Cool. And last question. I don't know if this is something that you are willing to share, but what is, and maybe I'm just not like maybe it's something obvious, but what does your screen name Feneb come from? Is that
Okay, so that's an interesting one. So when I was so I'm Ben. I think a number of people in the community, are aware that I'm Ben. But if
Mhm.
if they're not, my name is Ben. Ben F specifically because
Okay. Oh, so it's
when it's
backwards.
Ben F backwards. When I was in primary school, there were a number of Bens in my year group, and I was Ben F. And
Ah,
so when I was thinking of a screen name, I just thought, oh, why not say Ben F backwards? And that's
cool.
Feneb, and I've had that name for years. And yeah, it rolls off the tongue nicely.
It does.
Amazingly, it hadn't been taken on a bunch of platforms. So it's on Discord, Twitch, YouTube, all that sort of stuff. So yeah.
Cool.
That's where the name Feneb comes from.
That's awesome. Well, for everyone listening, I'll link to your YouTube channel in the description.
Thanks.
And yeah, it was great to talk to you, Feneb. And I love your passion with things like, moving versus no moving, and also like when to send and how to find information. That stuff is
Yeah.
really interesting to me, and I can tell that it's quite interesting to you too. So I liked talking about that a lot.
Yes. No, it's been great to chat. And of course, if you aren't subscribed already, subscribe to Where's Wetzler on YouTube. Your
Thank you.
videos are great.
Thanks.
The podcast especially, it's so good that somebody's finally doing a GeoGuessr podcast. So absolutely go and subscribe on YouTube right now.
Cool. Thank you so much. Well, have a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy the heat down in Australia. And yeah, I will talk to you soon. Okay. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Feneb. He was a real joy to talk to, a wealth of information. I wish him the best of luck on his quest to learn US area codes. I think I only know the ones in my home state, basically. Check out Feneb's YouTube channel. I'll link to that in the show notes. And we wish Feneb the best of luck in getting to the World Cup qualifiers. If anyone is interested in being a guest on the 5K GeoGuessr podcast, shoot me a message on GeoGuessr on Discord. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.